Sometimes, if I can be honest, I don't know what to do with Jesus. Maybe I should back that up and say, sometimes I don't really know what Jesus is going to do with me. But sometimes the things Jesus says, as we get them in the gospel, surprise and confuse and perplex me. Just when I think I have Jesus figured out, he says something that overturns my expectations. Just when I think I've got it figured out what this Christianity thing is all about, I'm reminded of something Jesus says that shakes it all again, and I'm forced to see things in a new way. That had been there all along, maybe, but that I couldn't recognize, or I'd gotten too comfortable that I couldn't see it anymore. So, for example, I'm wrestling lately this passage that comes from Luke's gospel, where Jesus is talking to presumably a gathering of his followers. And instead of the usual message you might expect from Jesus, the Son of God, who we usually think about talking about love, the importance of loving God and each other and all being in unity, Jesus says this: I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. I have a baptism with which to be baptized, and what stress I'm under till it's completed. Do you think I've come to bring peace to the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, 5 in one household will be divided, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son and son against father, mother against daughter and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law and daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. That's hard to hear. I mean, not only because in broad, general terms, it sure seems like Jesus is all the time elsewhere talking about love that brings us together, even loving our enemies, right? Surely that's bringing people together, not causing division. And so much of what you hear in pop religion is about Jesus is in favor of family values, whatever family values might mean. But man, it sure sounds like, to hear wider popular Christianity talked about, Jesus is there to make your family stick together. And here Jesus is saying, because of him and his presence, there will be fractures and fragmentation like fault lines even down the lines within a single family. What are we supposed to do about that? I mean, in a time like ours, that is already in so many ways so fractured and polarized, what are we going to do with a Jesus who says, I haven't come to bring peace, but more division? That's difficult, especially if you're tired, like at least I am, of seeing different factions and groups all claim Jesus for themselves like he's their mascot. Like, we've got Jesus and you don't. We're the ones who commandeer Jesus to be in charge of, or we're the ones who are rightfully carrying on the tradition of Jesus, and everybody else, you've got it wrong. And man, that can feel just so tiring, not just across denominational lines. The church over here says one way and everybody else is wrong. The church over there says we're got it right and everybody else is wrong. But man, in so many other ways, and what want to be described to us as culture wars, it is so easy to slide into that kind of thinking. That Jesus is there to take one side against another, and that the divisions we've created, Jesus endorses. And that Jesus is here to pick one of those sides. Pick your political party, your particular persuasion about economics, your even your local football team. It is so easy for us to imagine Jesus is our side and not their side, like he's our personal mascot. And if you're tired of seeing Jesus co-opted that way, it's really hard to hear Jesus say something like, I haven't come to bring peace, but division, when maybe what we're aching for is Jesus to say, I would like you to all get along. But we can't pretend these verses aren't here. We can't pretend this isn't a part of what the gospel is. So maybe this is a place to stop and ask, why does Jesus think he's come and that his coming will bring division? Why does Jesus think he's come to bring a fire and wants to see it kindled? What is this all about? And is it the same as our polarized culture war fighting society where we all take our own pet issues and then co-opt Jesus to be our pet mascot? Is there something different going on? Well, so here's the trick of the trade. One of the things that the followers of Jesus have been doing for 2,000 years is reading Jesus statements in light of other passages in the scripture. And sometimes you find one that's really, really clear that helps you understand something that's a little more confusing. Sometimes you pick another passage that is confusing in its own way, but it sheds some light on things. This week in our worship life, the lectionary gave us not only that difficult passage about Jesus wanting to bring fire and division rather than peace, but also a strange scene out of the Psalms. So this comes from Psalm 82, and this is, again, one of those passages that at least makes you scratch your head until we get to the good news waiting to be heard in it. The opening lines of Psalm 82 go like this: God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Give justice to the weak and the orphan. Maintain the right of the lowly and the destitute. Rescue the weak and needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. It's a weird scene because it starts out saying, here's God talking to other divine beings. I mean, that's kind of a head scratcher, right? Here we are, people who've been taught there's one God, that's it. So is this God talking to the angels? Is this God maybe talking to all the other imaginary gods of the other pagan cultures around? God talking to Baal and Asherah and all these other imaginary things, saying, how come you don't seem to be moved to deal with injustice in the world? Maybe it's simply God speaking to all the powers that are out there, whatever they are. But in any case, God speaks with a perspective. God, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, the God of Moses and Miriam, of Sarah and Rebekah, this God, the God of Israel, the God of, say, the Exodus, says to all the other powers out there, real and imagined, let's say, why are you all so comfortable with injustice? If you're around, if you exist, if you have power, stand up and speak up for the people who were victimized. And then God goes on to rattle off this list of the needy, the orphan, the troubled, the destitute, those who were stepped on, echoing God's ancient recurring call to care for those most vulnerable, the stranger, the widow, the foreigner, the widow, those who don't have others to provide for them, those who are being denied justice, and because they don't have prominence or prestige or wealth are easily swept aside. God says, I'm taking sides here. And I'm here to be on the side of those who are stepped on, of those who are most easily forgotten or swept under the rug. Here in Psalm 82, God says to all the other powers out there in the universe, whatever they are, how come you're not picking sides here? We need to be on the side of those who are victimized. I, God says, will be on the side of the victimized. And the psalm ends with this request: God, arise and rule over all the nations. Please speak up and act. When other powers that are around just sort of turn their heads and ignore that there's injustice going around, that other people are getting stepped on. This brings up a really, really important point that I think makes sense of what Jesus has to say there in that passage from Luke. Is that the God we meet in the scriptures isn't just big and powerful and indifferent. Isn't just big and powerful and then just sort of lets the world run and doesn't care when we abuse one another, when we take advantage of another, when we ignore the needs of one another. But the God we meet in the scriptures takes sides on the side of those who are most vulnerable. Right? So in the story, say, of the Exodus, right? There's the people of God who are enslaved by the Egyptians under Pharaoh's Egypt, and God doesn't say, well, I care about the Egyptians, you should be able to continue to enslave these Israelites because you're used to it, and I feel so bad for you enslaved people, how about we compromise, you can be slaves half of the week, and half of the week you'll be free. No, God takes the side of the enslaved and says, no, I'm here to liberate you, even at the cost of Pharaoh and all of his wealth and power coming crumbling down. God takes a side there because somebody is victimized, somebody is getting stepped on, and God is there to help them be set free. Or there's this famous story, right, where Jesus has the respectable religious people gather around him, and they say, we caught this woman in adultery, and we say she's supposed to be stoned like the commandments say. Jesus doesn't just sort of compromise. Jesus doesn't just say, I got to be neutral here, I can't pick a side. Jesus stands with the woman who's accused and says, how about this, everybody? Whoever's got no sin, you get to throw the first stone. It's not a compromise in the middle so that everybody can feel like they've gotten what they wanted. Jesus picks a side. The person who's being victimized, Jesus comes and stands as an advocate with her. Or poor Zacchaeus, right? This guy everybody in town hates because he's one of those no good, sellout tax collectors. And Jesus invites himself over to Zacchaeus' house. And instead of saying, well, all right, you're allowed to hate him every other day and then I'll be nice to him sometimes, Jesus declares, I'm here with Zacchaeus. I've taken a side here. If you're going to ridicule him, you ridicule me as well. Jesus has a way of taking sides in the midst of division to move us out of apathy, to move us out of indifference, to move us out of, who cares, other people have their problems, I just won't deal with it. And man, is that tempting. So yeah, in a culture like ours that is polarized in so many ways, and we don't want to be one more part of all that rotten polarization, okay. And in a culture that wants to fight everything as a culture war, okay, we don't need to be a part of that. But the alternative isn't just not to care. The alternative isn't just to say, well, we won't ever have any strong opinions about anything, but rather to ask with Jesus, where are you standing, Jesus? Who are the people you're standing with? And where I've gotten too comfortable and complacent, where I've ignored the fact that there are other people getting stepped on, where I've ignored that there are people in my neighborhood who could use an advocate or a friend, when I've ignored that there are people half a world away that I can easily get away with pretending don't matter because I don't have to face them day by day, Jesus calls us to take sides like God always has with the folks who are getting stepped on. And if you've ever been in that place where you've needed somebody to stand with you, or you've needed somebody to be an advocate, and you know what it's like to have somebody say, I will be with you. You won't go alone. They won't just be picking on you. I'll be with you. Then you know how powerful it is, what good news it is to hear Jesus say, when it comes to it, I'll pick a side and be on the side of folks who are getting stepped on and victimized. And Jesus is okay with that. Jesus has clarity of his mission, that even if everybody doesn't like that he's standing with the oppressed or the marginalized or the hurting or the outcast, he's willing to do it anyway. And he calls his followers to take that kind of side as well. Not to destroy those people on the other side, but to stand with folks who most desperately need somebody to stand with them. And to discover that's part of the gift of being followers of Jesus, is that we're called to step in the same direction as the God who from the beginning of the story chooses to stand with the enslaved rather than the oppressive Pharaoh, to stand with the accused woman rather than to throw rocks, to stand on the side of love rather than of hate, rather than just being indifferent and saying, love, hate, who cares? Jesus has come to start that kind of fire, not destructive, but to kindle something that passes from one person to another, like lighting one flame from another candle until there's more light in the world. You and I are called to be a part of that, even if other people don't like it, that we are called to take a stand and to side with folks who are stepped on and treated like they don't matter. When that happens, the followers of Jesus, at our most faithful, ask the question, where is Jesus standing? And then take our place beside him. I want to invite you then in this moment to let that question be your question this week. Where is Jesus choosing to stand? And then from there, where will I follow too? And if this is helpful, I offer this song as well as a reflection on what it's like to have your own spark kindled from the fire that Jesus is starting.
Sleeping in, holding to what's been, but you can see my complacency and call to me, let's begin. You kindled a fire in me, truth starts to inspire me. I was so safe and detached. Come strike your blessed match. Here in the dark, kindle a spark in me. Easy to stay numb, afraid of what's to come. But the cost of nice is too high a price. So hear, O Christ, beat your drum. You kindled a fire in me. Truth starts to inspire. so safe and detached. Come strike your blessed match. Here in the dark, kindle a spark in me. Used to faking smiles and straddling the aisles, but you take sides where hate divides. Your love abides and walks the mile. You kindle the fire in me. Truth starts to inspire me. I was so safe and detached. Come strike your blessed match. Here in the dark, kindle a spark in me. We've been waiting here, familiar with the fear, afraid to stand or take your hand, yet your command is so clear. You kindle the fire in me. Truth starts to inspire me. I was so safe and detached. Come strike your blessed match. Ignite new desire. Kindle a fire in me. You kindle the fire in me. Truth starts to inspire me. I was so safe and detached. Come strike your blessed match. Here in the dark, kindle a spark in me.